everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video review, and this will be a review of the first two episodes of X-Men 97. Now there might be spoilers throughout for these first two installments, so just beware when going into this overall video. Now I'm sure everybody watching will know what this is, but just in case there's people out there who doesn't know, X-Men 97 is the sequel or continuation to the classic X-Men the animated series from 1992, focusing on the famous Marvel comic book mutant team who over the course of their history take on issues such as victimization, abuse, angst and psychological impact amongst others, as mutant beings struggle to find their place within modern day society. Now I've talked extensively about the impact and quality of the original 1992 series within the channel, so I'll just stop by saying that it still remains one of the greatest comic book animated shows and still the best screen translation of the X-Men, whether it be in animation, television or movies. Now the X-Men 97 series itself debuted on Disney Plus on March the 20th, 2024 and has promised to stay as close as possible to the original series, from retaining the iconic intro theme music, the original voice actors, and keeping the same tone and storytelling and intelligence that made the original show so special. Now the series will overall consist of 10 episodes that will be dropping on a weekly basis, and in terms of the story it picks up literally a year after the 1992 series finale, which showed Professor X being taken away by Lilandra, leaving the X-Men to carry on their own. Now the first episode was titled To Me My X-Men, which saw the X-Men tracking down the ever-present Friends of Humanity who continue to hunt down mutants. The concern heightens when they learn that the Friends of Humanity have managed to attain Sentinel technology, which sees them come into battle once more with the Sentinels. Now the second episode was titled Mutant Liberation Begins, and this sees the team dealing with the reveal of Magneto being assigned as the new leader of the X-Men following Xavier's will. We see Magneto go into trial trying to convince both the X-Men and the world that his intentions are far more good. So after all of the reference from the original series and how we've previously seen so many failed sequels or continuations of other animated shows, how did X-Men 97 perform? Well, judging it first as a standalone entry of animation, overall I'd say that this was a decent start. There is a certain serious tone and intelligence and maturity here. So far, things haven't been diluted to try and appeal more to a kid-orientated audience as what we see so often. And like the original show, I think this is something that can appeal to both younger and older audiences so far. Visually, the animation is very bright and colourful and slick in terms of its production and fluidity. Thankfully, the majority of it is 2D hand-drawn with a few cel-shaded backgrounds and environments, but everything looks like it's all connected together. Now, I'm still not a fan of the more heavy, thick line art that we see drawn around from the characters. It's just not as pleasing on the eye. And while smooth at times, there are other passages where the movement and the frame rate are a bit stiff, and this is something that I noticed straight away at the beginning of the intro sequence. Now in terms of the episodes, the first entry was a bit rushed, as they did try to pack a lot in terms of the storytelling, and it was a bit off in terms of its pacing. The overall climatic battle against the X-Men and the Sentinels wasn't quite as spectacular as it should have been, and this episode did feel much more like a recreation of the 1992 series opening installments rather than a continuation, but still it was fine all the same. Now the second episode was much more superior and felt a lot more like the series was beginning its own story. We did get some interesting developments with Magneto going to trial, and I did like the scene where we have the dialogue between him and both the congressmen and politicians, quite similar to what we saw in the Sanctuary episodes from the 1992 series. We had the quite dramatic moment of Storm losing her powers and leaving the team after being shot down by the Executioner. Now I think it's safe to say that she will get them back at some point, but it will be interesting where they go with this development and how long they stick with it. We also had the intentions of the potential relationship between Magneto and Rogue, him being the only other person that she can touch. Again, this is something that they're keeping with the source material. And this will cause fractions in Rogue's relationship with Gambit, so again, interesting stuff to see. As is also with Jean having her baby, and how will that affect both her and Scott's participation within the team. We saw throughout the story that they had initially planned to leave the X-Men, but following the events within the courtroom, they've both decided to stay, especially when Storm departed the team. The second episode had the cliffhanger ending of a duplicate Jean Grey showing up at the mansion, so I'm sure we'll get much more time travel, parallel and alternate universes later on down the line. Again, very similar to what we saw in the later seasons of the original series. So we then need to have the predictable conversation of comparison to the 1992 series. Now, in terms of whether this will be better or not, the quick answer is no. It's not as good as the original, and yes, to be fair, it's only been 2 episodes in, but my initial vibe from watching is that the 1992 is still superior and will continue to be superior. Now, yes, X-Men 97 very much created the iconic intro sequence almost like for like, but it didn't work as well because again, the frame rate felt a bit more rigid and a bit more stiff. Just watch the original 1992 intro sequence, it feels a lot more faster, more fluid and much more dynamic. And again, I give them respect for keeping this sequence as a very predictable way of keeping the original fan base on side, but it almost felt like they didn't really make much of an effort, almost as if they felt obligated to produce this intro sequence. If you look at a lot of television shows and animated series in general, we very rarely now have an intro sequence at all. We just have the opening title screen and then we jump straight into the episode. This also goes the same for the end credit sequence. Now, again, if you remember from the first season of the original series, we had that great end credits sequence where we saw almost CGI models of the original characters showing the biography of their powers, and we had that great kick-ass rocking music playing in the background. And by comparison, again, the end credits sequence for these episodes in 97 version just didn't stand up in comparison. Now, in terms of the voice work, the ones for Storm, Beast, Magneto, Gambit and Jubilee were very good, almost exactly the same from the original show. The one for Rogue was a bit mixed, and in terms of Wolverine, he sounded a bit too tired. Again, this could be down to the actor's age. We do have to remind ourselves that the 1992 series was almost 30 years ago, but again, it was convincing enough to make me carry on watching the show. I also felt that there was something of an imbalance in terms of the audio mixing and the soundtrack. It didn't quite have that synergy with the action or the pacing. Again, the 1992 show had much more poise, better timing, better pacing, and just overall better storytelling. But again, this is only 2 episodes in. We then have to talk about characterization, and Magneto was easily the standout character, carrying the same presence and authority from the 1992 show. The next most integral character was Cyclops, which on the one hand is good, as I think he is important to be kept as one of the central characters. Again, we saw this with the original show. But especially in terms of the first episode, he comes across as a bit grumpy and complacent, as we saw him very disillusioned at the fact that Xavier was gone and he was struggling to connect and redirect the team. And whilst this makes sense from certainly leaving off from the finale, I just hope they don't keep this tone for him for the remainder of the series. I also didn't like at all Rogue absorbing the Doctor's abilities to be able to deliver Jean's baby in the second episode, because the whole point of Rogue's absorption powers is that she used them to disarm opponents, and that she struggled to contain both the abilities and memories and emotions of the individual that she absorbed. What is so integral to the character is that despite having all of the beauty and all of the amazing strength, she still has this curse in not being able to be intimate with people, and when she tries to do so, it has very much of a negative effect. But if you take that away, you very much take away the conflict and the angst of the character. So I really don't like the fact that she's able to control that ability, and I really hope that they take that away later on down the series. I'm sure we'll get further development for other characters later on, such as Jubilee and Wolverine and Gambit and Morph as well. We also need to find out exactly why has Bishop remained within this timeline and what's going on with his future. I also hope we get some sort of focus on Archangel, as again what we saw from the original series. We do wonder how many classic villains from the source material we will get to see overall. And will we see other lesser known villains from the source material? It will be interesting to find out. But overall, these opening 2 episodes was a solid effort. I think there's enough here to keep me invested as to what happens next. So to an extent, that's very much mission accomplished. Now, whilst I don't think there's anybody who truly believes that X-Men 97 will go on to surpass or even match the incredible quality from the 1992 series, I do think that so far there is at least potential here for this show to be a fine companion piece to that animated series. And in this day and era of so many failed sequels and reboots and remakes, I think that's very much a sign of optimism to be had going ahead for the future. So that's my overall thoughts and feelings when looking at the first 2 opening episodes of X-Men 97. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as usual, I will provide both a season finale and also a season overall review of the show as we wind down to the further episodes later on down the line. so look out for those reviews in the future. And if you have any other television reviews or movies or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover, then also let me know in the comments below, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you later on down the line within the channel. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.